To be introduced by Mrs. Carter, I'm thrilled to be able to meet you. I believe caregiving is a nonpartisan issue, but as a lifelong Democrat and advocate, it's just fabulous to be here, especially a Kansas Democrat, because there's 4 of us. So it's very wonderful. Your work in leadership, Mrs. Carter, in the field of mental health and in caregiving is truly extraordinary. And all of us here would do well to do half of what you've been able to do for this country. And so I'm very honored to be here. I also wanted to recognize the award that you received from Pam Hyde and SAMHSA last week in Hollywood. I was on a staff meeting where Pam said, I'm on my way to Hollywood, that Mrs. Carter would be there, and that they awarded you an award in recognition of your work in mental health.
That was interesting, walking down the red carpet.
She said she was going to walk down the red carpet, so of course we were all interested in what she was going to wear, so as good colleagues ribbed her about that. We work with SAMHSA on issues of mental health, and Pam and I have met and talked early after she was appointed. I came to Washington just a few months before she did, about mental health. I received, when I checked in yesterday, a copy of your most recent book and started reading it last night. I got through the introduction and I'm on the first chapter about stigma, where you talk about that will be a good day when people stand up and acknowledge the role that mental health plays in our families. So I want to do that this morning and acknowledge to you all, like all families, mental health issues have impacted mine. I have family members who dealt with severe and persistent mental illness, clinical depression, substance abuse, and a cousin who committed suicide. These are national issues and family issues, and they belong to all of us. So thank you very much. I also want to thank you on behalf of the Obama administration for what you're doing with regard to caregivers. Clearly this has become a signature issue. It's the reason I wanted to come here today to demonstrate not just my commitment, but this administration's commitment to working with you. And I know you came to town and met with the Secretary to talk specifically about the recommendations that we're covering today. So it's an honor, really, to be here. I had a chance to meet with Dr. Burkell in August. Lisa came, Eason, Laura was there in my office. It's good to see you all again. Glad to be in Americas. And I've been to Georgia before, but not this far south, so it's wonderful. And I also want to recognize one of my staff members, Costas. I saw you when I said hello over this way. Costas Miskas is our regional administrator in Atlanta, covering the southeast states in Region 4. So, well, caregivers. Sometimes when I meet with caregivers, it's the little things that stay with me. I met last year in San Antonio. I was invited to San Antonio to speak at the National Adult Protective Services Conference. Some of you are nodding. I was at the APS conference. And often when I have the time, I visit local programs. And in San Antonio, I visited an adult day program. And it was a wonderful program. I usually have the blessing of seeing much of the best work that we're doing. And afterwards, I've met with 2 family caregivers whose loved ones were at this adult day program. And like I said, it's sometimes the little things. I sat and talked to this woman who is caring full-time for her sister who lives with her. And she just went on and on about the value of adult day programming. And she talked about the burden of caregiving. And she said, you know, it's really important for me, my sister eat well-balanced meals, that she get good nutrition. But she said, I'm retired, and she said, that really has impacted my life, because there are times really when my husband and I would come home at night, and really all we want, and I finished her sentence. I said, is a bowl of cereal for supper? She said, yes. So this woman can't have Cheerios for dinner anymore, because she really takes this quite seriously, and that stuck with me. The other woman sitting there is caring for her mother, and her mother was at the adult day program, and she talked about how wonderful these services are. And that for her, the little piece that's so hard is that she has to get up in the morning to take her mother to this program, which means she has to get up as a retired person and get dressed. You know, the magnitude of the impact on caregiving ranges from the small to the enormous. I also meet with caregivers a lot. I attended the Fearless Caregiver Conference in December in Port St. Lucie in Florida. And I was invited by Gary Barg to speak. But I asked if I could come early as caregivers were talking to each other, and that I not be introduced, that I be able to come to the back of the room and just listen. And I sat and listened as caregivers, one after another, talked about isolation and the devastating impact of isolation. And those of you who have been in caregiver groups understand how this feels to be in that setting. And this woman who stood up, who was just struggling with caregiving, who was so alone and almost in tears that she found that there were resources available. And the other people who'd been on this journey who were farther along physically got up to comfort her in this meeting. And sitting at the back of the room listening about the enormity, those things stay with me as well. As do all of the things in between isolation and a bowl of cereal. I was at the National Council on Aging conference in Chicago in March, and there are some fabulous programs at the Rush Medical Center. Robin Golden, who's the former president of ASA, American Society on Aging, works at Rush Medical Center. So I went to see their staff, and I asked if I could meet with a group of their caregivers, because they have a caregiver support group. And I travel light today. I came with Costas. I often have a group of feds with me, 4 or 5 people in blue suits. And I did that day. We showed up in Chicago, and there were a group of us. And I said to my staff, now I want to meet with the caregivers by myself. I don't want an entourage. I want to go in and meet with the caregivers. So as we were going into the room, I could hear the staff talking to each other. And they were whispering, and they were saying, they don't know what they're supposed to do. And it's like, it'll be okay. I mean, really, it'll be okay. I'm not scary. It'll be okay. And we had about an hour. And I came into this room, and we're sitting in kind of a hollow square, and they're all sitting around, kind of not knowing what the agenda is. And I only needed to ask them one question, and we spoke for an hour. And the question that I used was, how did you get into caregiving? Did it happen gradually or all of a sudden? And that's all it took. And I can remember the faces of the people around the table. And the woman who started was the oldest daughter, because we always start things. The oldest daughter said, well, I'm the oldest daughter. I always knew that this would be mine. It's just been clear. My role in the family forever as the oldest daughter has been the one that was called upon. So this was not a surprise to me. There was a woman sitting fairly close to her who was caring for a loved one. I can't remember if it was a sister or a mother. And she talked about being trapped in her home. It was chilling. She said, I work all week, and then at 5 o'clock, from 5 o'clock on Friday till 9 o'clock on Monday, I can't leave my house because I'm trapped in my house with no other support. And I thought it was interesting because she was in a support group, because I thought, we need to help her. I mean, she's trapped in her home. This is not good for her or the person she's caring for, either one. To have that sort of isolation and dynamic that's so one-on-one, you need broader supports. There was a woman who was sitting at this table over here talking about spending her own resources, and I know that one of the things on your list of 12 recommendations is to talk about tax policy, because this woman talked to me about tax policy and what she could do to get a tax break for her own resources that she's using to pay for her loved one. There was a man sitting over here caring for his lifetime partner of 25 years, reminding us that families come in all shapes and sizes, and there's no one size fits all for caregiving. It happens with all of us. And then there was a woman sitting here who was working 2 jobs. And she had managed to escape, which how it really felt when she described it, for lunch to come see me. And she was spending all of her time working and caring for her husband. I remember these people. These are the same people that you've met, maybe not in those 3 locations, but I do talk to caregivers, and I prefer to do it quietly and by myself and without media and without staff to really impact and talk to them one-on-one. So I came today to lend my support and to tell you that I do understand, and to demonstrate my commitment to working on this issue at a national level. I have read through and met with you about the National Quality Initiative and the report. And you do several things in the report. You document the need. And I understand the need. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen it in my hometown. As I was Secretary of Aging, they invited me back to my hometown in Clearwater, Kansas, a town of about 1,800, where they had a barbecue at the junior high. You all know how these go. And I could see this woman that I grew up with on the front row who was exhausted. You could see it. I can see caregiving as well. You document the scope in your report, and I understand the scope of the problem. 80%